A group of GOP lawmakers today introducing a bill that would prevent states from being bailed out if their pensions go belly up. Right now, all state pensions, probably with the exception of New York, are underfunded to the tune of about $472 billion. Senator John Thune of South Dakota, one of the lawmakers trying to get a handle on all of this. Senator, good to have you.
Good afternoon, Neil.
So obviously you're not a fan of this, but a lot of states, Republicans as well, running them, say they're pushed against the wall. What do you say?
Well, I just think we need more accountability and more transparency. You have lots of states who have shortfalls in their pension funds and unfunded liabilities, and those are being understated because you don't have fair market valuations being used to compute those liabilities. And I think it's important that we know what the dimensions of the problem really are. So this is about transparency, it's about openness, it's about giving the American taxpayer and these states, and frankly for that matter, this is a good thing for public employees because they need to know whether or not those pension benefits are going to be able to be paid out.
Well, they'd love to be bailed out, wouldn't they?
Well, I think a lot of states would, but that's not an option. And I think that we need to make it very clear that they're going to have to exercise the necessary steps to get their fiscal house in order, and that the federal government is not going to be in a position to provide any sorts of bailouts. The important issue here, however, is to make sure that we at least know, that the taxpayers know, that the public employees know, the American people know what is the real condition of some of these pension funds, and that's what this legislation is designed to do.
Are you troubled, Senator, that those who try to do the right thing, in other words, get a handle on these pensions, get a kick in the fatty for it? Chris Christie comes to mind in New Jersey, as you probably heard earlier today. A key ratings agency downgraded the state's debt because of this ongoing morass. There you have a governor trying to deal with it, stymied by a legislature fighting him over it, and that's the just desserts.
You got to give him credit for trying to do the right thing. There are lots of states, Neil, across the country, as you know, that are doing the right things and who have their pension funds in good condition relative to some of the more profligate states. But what shouldn't happen is you shouldn't have the taxpayers from states that are managing their situations well paying for those states that aren't. And that's unfortunately what we could end up with if we don't at least get the right information out there and force these states to start focusing on their own problems and managing these liabilities in a way that will make sure that we don't need some bailout somewhere down the road. Do
you envision that possibility, a state just getting bailed out?
I don't. I mean, I don't think there's any appetite here, certainly not a capacity here at the federal level for that. It seems to me at least that these states are going to have to recognize that they're going to have to take the necessary steps, painful though they may be, to get their own balance sheets in order. We cannot have these states coming to the federal government for assistance, and there's been some discussion, of course, as you know, some of the larger states that are having serious fiscal problems, but that's not an option, and that's why it's so important that the truth get out there, that the facts get out there, and so that these states are at least, the information is in the hands of the taxpayers of those respective states, the employees of these states. They know what the real true condition of these pension funds is and what the long-term unfunded liabilities of these states is, so they can start forcing their state leaders to take the right steps to get it under control.
I don't know what made me think of this, Senator, but I'm wondering, do you think the next Republican nominee for president should be a senator or a governor? Senator is what we've got now, who became the president. Governors argue they have the executive experience, so they're better suited to the job. So I would imagine you would be pro-governor. Well,
I'm pro the best person for the job, and frankly, that whoever is in the best position to replace the current administration, that's who we ought to get out there. But there are arguments to be made. There are governors who are doing a great job out there of managing their state's fiscal situation, and they have a very strong and compelling narrative because obviously what's happening here at the federal level is a much bigger example of some of the problems that our states are having. And if you want to see where these states are going to be in a few years if they don't take steps to get this situation under control, look at the $14.3 trillion debt that the federal government has racked up with no end in sight.
Okay, so it's not out of the question to think of a senator, let's say, from a state like South Dakota running for president, right?
I think states like South Dakota and people who come from South Dakota have reputations for living within their means, have reputations for common sense, and for making the right kinds of judgments on issues like this, Neil.
Senator, thank you very much. Very good seeing you again.
Good to be with you.
Senator John Thune.